Okay. Can everyone hear me pretty good?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. All right. Good evening again. All right. We're here to discuss the AAPTEL Task 1, and we're going to have a scholarly discussion tonight. And this is Zoom Group 4. And I'm going to pull up the document that I shared this afternoon. And I'll kind of type in that. Let me get back to, okay. Let's see, share screen. Safari, can you see that?
Yes.
Wonderful,
Yes.
wonderful. All right, that's wonderful. Okay, so we'll begin by discussing the AAPTEL Task 1. Okay, I posted a general description here of the task. It says the candidate will conduct a literature review reflecting various teacher empowerment and leadership best practices from reputable scholarly sources. The review should include a bibliography. The candidate will develop a visual checklist of best practices for teacher empowerment and leadership. So the first question that I would like to ask is concerning the research. Concerning the research that we did. I know we had, I believe, 5 areas to research. So what was learned through the research?
I'll start real quickly. When we had been talking about teacher efficacy, I will admit I was not 100% sure what that meant. It's not a term I have used or heard often. And so looking at the definition I had here from the article, Teacher Efficacy, what is it and does it matter? Was that it's the teacher's confidence in their ability to promote students' learning. And yeah, that was, I think, just really eye-opening, is like, okay, like there's a word for that. Efficacy is the teacher's confidence, and just how important it is to build your teacher's confidence and the impact that will have on student learning, solely just having a staff of confident teachers and the strategies you can do, and how important it is giving them successful experiences that they can take with them, especially those first few years of teaching, which then tied over into the research about mentoring and how having a good mentor program to provide those successful experiences early on is very significant in building efficacy with your staff.
I like what our district does when you said the mentor program. We have the director of teacher leadership, basically, is his title. And he asked for each building principal to send him 2 to 3 names. And those go through a pretty, they are assigned new teachers within the school. Some, like myself, was being a physical education teacher, I went through the training, and I am kind of a mentor to the new PE teachers, not necessarily in my school, but they will send me out to the other schools. So it works kind of, if you're a regular classroom teacher, you're trained to be a mentor of someone in your school. And the related arts people, we are trained to be mentors outside the school.
Cool deal. Anyone else on that? On any research that?
I thought the research was interesting when I was reading Darling Hammond's, one of her articles was the lack of time for professional development in the United States compared to other countries, and how they will take time through the day to work on those PDs, where most of the time here in the US, we're stuck as a PD, or you're coming in on during the summer, things like that. I just thought it was interesting, the different perceptions that she showed between the US and other countries.
Yeah, every time I would look up professional development and I would see from other countries, I just was interested and started reading it. And I was like, their perspective from other countries is so different than ours. And it also reminded me because I'm on our renewal team here at school. And one of our goals is for each of our renewal goals to have professional development tied to it. And I was able to also challenge the fact that that included a lot of professional development for our teachers. And was it going to, I went back to research and having the conversation with our central staff that oversees our renewal plan and was saying, okay, but are we going to be able to follow through with that and make it actual professional development, or are we doing a checklist? And I was able to go back to this research. So it was really good to be able to have an eye-opening conversation with them and say, like, are we doing this for a checklist? Or are we doing this because we really want to professionally develop our staff? And how much time and energy that would really need to go into it. So we were able to come to a mutual agreement of what we really needed to focus on for professional development. Another thing that I learned was recruitment. That was big for us. I really wanted to do a lot of research on that because we are down to pretty critical staff members or positions here at our school this year. And we're very rural. I think I mentioned that to you guys before. And so reading the research and the difference in recruitment in rural areas and the needs and what you should focus on in recruitment. And it was really neat, like an eye-opening to me, how important non-monetary incentives were in a lot of the articles that I hadn't really thought of. Like you automatically go to like the signing bonuses and any additional compensation pay that you can give for new hires. But one of the things that I read was talking about focusing on the administrative support and family oriented culture and strong community relationships and tight networking among teachers and community members, smaller class sizes, like all of those being stronger recruitment factors than the monetary incentives. And that was eye-opening for me to think about.
Very good.
Coming up, what kind of what you said there with the non-monetary, it kept coming up. Trust seemed to kind of be a overlying theme in a lot of the research I was looking at. Their leadership ability, you're going to have a much more successful school.
Yeah.
And to go on with the recruitment and looking at placement, I thought that I had read some research on the placement of new teachers in the classroom and how it says that they found novice teachers are sorted or more often sorted into classrooms that let's see, with lower levels of student achievement, greater disciplinary issues, and larger shares of English language learners. And in the research I was reading, with these teachers, these new teachers getting placed into these more difficult classrooms, then they're going to struggle to build that efficacy because they're not going to have as many positive experiences to build their confidence if they're put in a classroom that does have more challenges in their first few years. And the research that I was reading showed that veteran teachers usually get, from what they found, say easier. I mean, no, it's easy, but classrooms with groups of students that are easier to manage.
Good deal.
Less challenging.
Yes, less challenging.
When it comes to recruitment, I think about personally at Woodington. I applied for a position as Dean of Students in another county. And I was talking to my principal about it. And my principal said, well, I wish you the best because when it comes to moving up, he said, we have no problem with that as administrators. He said, I wish you the best. If it's for an upgraded position, I wish you the best and I hope that you get it. He said, but if you leave this school for another math position, I'm going to have a problem with you because math teachers are already hard to come by because I know there are not a lot. I know there are about 3 openings for middle school math teachers right now in Lenoir County. And I believe that has a lot to do with, the ability for teachers to go and, well, the ability for administrators to find teachers. Recruitment is hard, especially when teachers are limited. And when it comes to the style of teacher that is more prominent now, you have more teachers who are coming in lateral entry with no experience in education, no degrees in education, versus 20 years ago when you have more students who are graduating with educational degrees. So that's also made the recruitment process more difficult in a sense, in my opinion. Yeah, in my opinion. All right. Anything else on the research? Anything else on research?
We're good.
Okay. All right, then. Let's move on. Number 2, walkthrough forms. Okay. The first question I would like to ask is, where did you get your information for the walkthrough forms?
So our system has a walkthrough form, and then we have a walkthrough form that's specific to our school. And they're research-based and they're really, really good. And so I went with those.
School-wide and district-wide, okay. Research based. All right.
In our county,
We also,
has an instructional
Go ahead.
rounds form that the district uses that looks for high yield strategies. And then it's got a list of quite a few of them, and then they just make notes on what they noticed in the classrooms and can see what high yield strategies are being used throughout the schools. And so this is a county one that I enjoyed using and going in and really having that like intention to look for these different strategies. And then the form also gives you examples of what each strategy is. So you can really see, what is it you're looking for in each room.
Very good.
ours comes from our new district, the smart coaching tool that's just been developed using the explicit direct instruction research. And that's kind of our informal walkthroughs. And then in South Carolina has something called the Expanded Adept 4.0. And that's kind of the official observation tool. But what I chose to use was the district one. It's much simpler to use than the would be.
Okay, just to include the name here, name that again for me.
Our district one is the smart coaching tool.
Okay. Gotcha. All right.
The state is Adept 4.0.
Adept 4.0. Okay. Versus ADEPT. Is that right?
Yep.
4.0. Okay.
Yes.
My district uses something called a CIET, and I forgot what that acronym stands for. I wish I remembered it, but I forgot what the acronym stands for. But when it comes to our district, our school uses the same tool. So my assistant principal shared that with me, and that's where I got my walkthrough information from. Cool deal. All right. So what does your school and district use? We've already covered that. Essentially. Okay. Anything else on the walkthrough forms? How was the walkthrough experience? Let's talk about that. How was the walkthrough experience?
I enjoyed it. I made sure I got into each a classroom in each grade level, just get a wide range. And as Aaron mentioned earlier, talking about how like when teachers are doing good things, we're so isolated in our classroom. So it's nice to have someone come in and, before I would leave, I would, compliment each teacher on something I saw that I was impressed with. And just the smiles and their reactions, and like, they're like, just, oh, thank you so much. It was just fun. It was fun to be in there, to be with the kids. And I also just felt so supported by the staff when they were so welcoming to me, knowing that this is something I was doing for our classwork, and to just open up their door and say, of course, yeah, come in whenever you need something.
Definitely.
It's kind of the way I asked permission from my administrative team if I could go into, and once they granted that, and then I kind of sent an email to the staff and say, hey, I'm in school working on this project. Would you be willing, who would be willing to let me come in? And I would say 90% of the staff said anytime. And I too tried to get to every grade level, but I really focused a lot on third grade because that's where we found their biggest gap was in the AAPTEL project.
Mhm.
Okay.
For me, like Michelle reiterated, it was super exciting to just be back in a classroom and to be able to focus on a classroom and not one-on-one students. But it was also so refreshing to see students that I know because of the work that I do are really, really struggling outside of the classroom and with their personal lives. And some students who have had really bad relationships with teachers in the past, but to see them actively engaged in classes and to see them excited about learning was just really refreshing to be in some of our classes. And some of our teachers like had an idea that I was coming, like I had asked them, but like one guy was like, oh, I didn't know you meant like this week, but come on in. So it was also refreshing to know that like he wasn't preparing a show for me. That was really what was genuinely, authentically going on in his classroom. And to see how it was ran and to see some of our students so engaged in conversation, and it wasn't just they were being talked at, but they were really learning, it was refreshing. So
Gotcha. I understand. I agree with that. The first day I started the walkthroughs, I went with my principal. And my principal he's the, kind of stern, principal that when he walks in, it's like, uh-oh, what have I done wrong? That's the kind of principal that he is. And when I walked in with him, some of the teachers were like, uh-oh, like what's going on? And one was like, is everything okay? He was like, yeah, we're fine. We're just doing a walkthrough and everything. And but it was a wonderful experience to be able to see how other teachers, conduct and handle their classrooms. It was really a refreshing thing. Even to see that the temperatures are different, the temperatures upstairs, some of those rooms are hot, and I was like, wow, you teach up here and it's hot like this, it's like it was really warm up there, so I think it was a breath of fresh air. And when I was talking to my other 7th grade teachers about it during lunch, they were like, you know what, I believe every teacher ought to have where like every 3 months they're made to go in and do some walkthroughs to just see and get a glimpse of what's going on in other classrooms. Just to say, oh, well, I like the way she did this, or I don't think I like the way he did that. I would like to do this differently, or whatever. I think it's a wonderful experience. And I agree with that. And concerning the actual walkthrough, does anyone have anything that they would like to share? I actually have a copy with me. I focused on student engagement. And that piece was students are actively engaged with concepts relevant to the content of the lesson. And then I covered learning targets. Of course, students can explain or articulate what they're learning. Student outcomes. Students have opportunities to demonstrate skills through varied, relevant, or rigorous activities, classroom culture, talking about the classroom norms for high expectations. And yeah, that's what I covered. So anyone have anything maybe different that they included in theirs?
We were looking for either having stated or posted the learning objective. With our school focus being on the arts, we have a piece on if they're including any type of standard from a visual arts or some type of mixed media arts thing. So that was two of the big things we were looking at.
Gotcha. Very good. Anyone
Our-
else? Okay, go ahead.
You can go, Michelle.
When I was walking through, I just thought it was interesting as I was looking at the strategies, which ones I saw in every class I went in to show like, okay, what is it that our school has really emphasized to the point that every classroom I walked in had? And that was the essential questions or the learning goals clearly stated. And that was in every classroom for ELA and as well as math. Sometimes social studies or science, but they had all of their ELA and mathematics learning goals posted in the room. And that was kindergarten all the way up to 5th grade. And then every classroom was also using anchor charts and graphic organizers. So those are those three things that I noticed when I went in that, and our school does emphasize that. And it was apparent just by walking through that 100% of the classrooms I did my walkthrough were using those strategies.
That's a good point to mention. At my school, every student, and not every student, every teacher had, we call it swab it. Student will be able to, such and such and such, and then in order to such and such and such. That was in every classroom, because they made us do it. So quite frankly, it was there. So that was a good thing to see.
One thing that was exciting for me is part of our renewal goal is going back to our research of peer reviews. And so as part of our planning block meetings bi-weekly, they do go do a walkthrough with a peer, and that peer gets that immediate feedback too, which is really cool. And part of the process in our walkthrough tool is having conversation with students. And some of the conversations that are had with students is the clarity of learning. Like you talk to a student and they have to describe the purpose of the lesson and not just what the activity is. And talking to a student and finding out if they understand the quality of work and how it's going to be evaluated. And if the students find what they're doing work interesting, challenging, connected to learning, things like that. There's there's 5 questions that we ask students. And it was really cool because you can tell that has become a norm for our students and for our teachers, because when you went in the classroom, students some were a little apprehensive, but some were excited and were asking if they could be the one to share with me. So that was cool that they were used to that common language and knew what they wanted to share with us. So.
Very good. Very good. Anything else on walkthroughs? All right. Let's move on to our third topic, surveys. Okay. When it comes to the surveys, where did you get your information? And excuse me, I need to get an extension cord to plug up my computer. But someone chime in.
I can start. I pulled
Mine
mine.
straight from the North Carolina working conditions.
I did the same as well from the leadership questions they had on the working conditions survey.
I did that as well, but I also I made sure that they met with our 5 criteria, and I also asked our administrative team if there was anything that they felt like we needed to have some feedback from our teachers, and so specifically asked those so that they could be incorporated. So we got some really good feedback.
I really like the North Carolina Working Conditions survey, looking at the questions, because we have one that's just called South Carolina Teacher Response Survey. And it asks the most basic questions of, do you feel safe in your school? Do you feel safe leaving your school? Is your school building clean? I mean, that's really not getting in of what we were looking at. So I found a couple of questions from ours that, do you feel respected at your school? But the majority of my questions came from the North Carolina Working Conditions. I thought they had some really informative type questions to ask.
That's where I got my questions from as well, the North Carolina Working Conditions Survey. Anyone want to share a particular question maybe that you had? I have a copy of mine here. Maybe anyone want to share a particular question where you got some different responses as to what you kind of thought you would get? Anyone have one of those particular questions?
Mine was being part of the hiring or interview process. I kind of thought that he included at least one teacher in on an interview if it was a second grade position, but by the responses that I received from the teachers, that was not the case. About 90% said they did not feel like they had a part of the hiring process.
Okay.
Yeah, the majority of my students, or not students, staff also said that they did not have a role in the hiring process or determining new teachers to the school, which I thought was interesting because I've been included in quite a few interviews for new staff. And now, so just interesting seeing other perceptions where if maybe someone hasn't been asked, they have no clue that staff is in on some interviews. Typically, I've seen on the interviews one teacher from each team, from that grade level team, and on the interview. But it was interesting. Over half replied that there was no role at all.
Wow.
I later found out that it's usually the reigning teacher of the year, whoever that would be, because I've been on interviews, but they said, yeah, you were school teacher of the year a couple of years ago. So it is usually that teacher of the year that is in on the interview process.
Okay. How about the question? This one kind of raised some eyebrows. Let's see, let me find it. Teachers are recognized as educational experts. Now, I got about 20% said strongly disagree on that one. And I wonder, I brought it up with my grade level in discussion one day this week during lunch. We eat lunch together. And they said, well, Jeffrey, think about it this way. As far as math, they make us, quote unquote, use open up resources as our standard for our curriculum. They make teachers essentially, use particular programs for particular, forms of instruction. So they're like, maybe they don't consider us as maybe they don't consider themselves as experts because they're not given maybe all of the freedom, quote unquote, that they desire to have in their classroom. That's how they feel about it. I don't know how any of you may feel about that particular question.
Ours was actually, and I went back to our last year's survey just to see if it was consistent, and it remained consistent, that ours was much higher than the district and the state level. And I find the opposite with our administrative team, where we have one teacher who says that it took her a long time to not walk on eggshells because of where she came from. Everything was expected to be in this box, and it took her a while to be okay with not being micromanaged. And our administrator, I don't want to say they're hands off because that's by no means what it is, but they trust our leaders. They trust our teachers to be leaders, and they respect their different teaching styles. And so that's sometimes hard for teachers, especially first year teachers who are like, tell me how you want me to do it. And our administrator, especially our principal, is like, no, you tell me how you do it the best because this is your classroom. But our data on that is really positive, actually.
Very good. All right. Anything else on the survey? All right, very good job. Thank you. Let's move on. Second thing the second thing after the AAPTEL Task 1, I want to just mention or ask, is there any insight on Task 2 and Task 3? And I did put a little description of each task. Task 2, of course, this week's task is the gap analysis and the needs assessment. Using the checklist created in Task 1, we will collect data in the school to identify possible gaps between teacher practices and research-based practices. After analyzing the data, candidates will create a needs assessment that addresses needs in 5 areas addressed in the Task 1 lit review. So, any insight on that? Anything?
I actually turned in Task 2 yesterday for review, and he said I did a good job on it.
Okay.
It seems to, if you've done your walkthroughs and you've had your survey responses, that one just kind of flows pretty easily to me. It's
Okay.
kind of replugging in some of the data you've come up with.
And mixing it with some of the research as well from Task 1.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Cool deal. Anything else on that one? All right. How about Task 3? Now this one is coming up, what, next week? Is that right? Or week after next week? Is it next week?
The draft, yeah.
Yeah,
I almost finished Task 3 as well, and it's a booger. It's pretty difficult.
Okay.
And that's the graphic organizer, right? Similar to what we did.
Yes, you've got
for-
that.
That's in Task 3.
Action plan, definitely.
And then I pulled one of the off the, I guess, helpful hint type things they have under our weekly things. I pulled a gap analysis template from trying to include that in there as well. But this one to me is kind of hard. It's past kind of hard. It's pretty difficult.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, I'll fight that battle when I get there. And
I'm going to be out of town all next
Yeah.
week with work, so I'm trying to get ahead.
Yeah. Fortunately for me, I'm going to be out of town. I'm excited. We're going to the Ron Clark Academy. But everyone in my PLC, except one, is going to be with me. So we're going to Zoom in with her to finalize our action plan next week. We're meeting tomorrow, but then again next week. So.
Okay. All right. Well, is there anything else that anyone would like to share? I think we've done a pretty good job covering our bases here. If not, I will share out this information and I will also share out the video once it is uploaded. Okay. All right. Let me.
All right. Sounds good.
Stop sharing
Thank you.
first, and then let me stop